Hey guys, this is Mel, and I am back to talk about two episodes of The Flash. Episode 708, titled The People vs. Killer Frost, which premiered May 4th, 2021, and as well as episode 709, titled Timeless, which premiered May 11th, 2021. I'm recording on May 18th, just after midnight, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episodes already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episodes. My other video reminders are up on screen, so take a moment to remind yourselves of those. Sorry for the delay. I really wanted to try to clump a bunch of them together, but then I realized that the next two episodes are two-parters, so I figured, like, okay, I'll just have those be in their two separate ones, and we'll talk about these two now. So I'll talk about 708 first, and then we'll talk about 709, and then there is some news at the very end of the episode if you want to stay tuned for that. I will try to keep this within 20 minutes, but let's see where this goes. So let's start with 708 first. So the timeline, I think it's shortly after the events of 707. It's definitely enough time for Frost to have skipped her original trial, from my understanding. Because she was arrested at the end of 707. So that's my understanding of how much time has actually passed. But the villain of the episode, I will say it's Christian Kramer, and I guess her side of the justice system, because they're going against Frost. And then also Speed Force Nora, which I'll say right now, I completely knew it. Like, I didn't trust her for a second, and I was proven right. Thank you. Have a good day. But let's go with the opening scene. So the opening scene actually is with Christian Kramer going to Argus, presumably to do some type of proposal. We do find out later on it's because she wanted to get them to reproduce the cure based off of the notes from the version that Star Labs had given to Central City Police Department. So with that, let's go into the storylines. Just give me one moment. Sorry about that. I remembered one key thing about 709. I had to write that down before continuing. Anyways, storylines for 708. I picked up on two. I'm going to call it, first one being Frost's fate, and the second one being who is the Strength Force. So with the first storyline, this is deals with Frost, Caitlin, Cecile, Cisco, Allegra, and Joe, all having to deal with Frost's criminal trial. This is where we see Kramer trying to force the cure, which was created by Argus, like I mentioned, as Frost's punishment instead of her serving a life sentence in prison. Instead, after a whole slew of things happen in the episode, Frost offers herself up to the life sentence in prison without any chance of parole, so that she doesn't have the cure forced down onto her, because Kramer wanted to set the precedent that if Frost got convicted and the cure was used as a punishment, then it would pretty much set the stage for any meta who wanted to commit a crime. If they got caught, then they would be forced to take the cure, which is what Frost did not want, since the cure was always meant to be a choice for metas to take. So instead, Frost sacrifices herself pretty much with a life sentence without any chance of parole, which adhered to what the opposition's claims were for the cure, was to ensure that a dangerous meta criminal would be off the streets. Well, if she is stuck in prison without any chance of parole, that serves the same purpose as what the cure was meant to do. So the judge agrees with Frost's offer to take that statement. Though I would have been interested to know what the judge would have ruled without her offer. I wanted to know which way the judge would have swayed, but we'll never know now. And in the crowd of her trial is, I think, Norvak, that metahuman that has that weird snake eye thing. He tells her as she walks out, or she gets escorted out, is that all the meadows will know her sacrifice in that trial. So that was an interesting thing. I mean, you only had the one line, but you kind of wonder, why would you show focus on Norvak in the back of the courtroom throughout the trial if something wasn't going to happen, you know? So there's that. With the second storyline, with who is the Strength Force, this deals with Barry, Iris, and Speed Force Nora, looking to zero in on the Strength Force, which is Freza. And they find out that the human persona is Alexa Rivera in Keystone City. She explains that she claims, or she doesn't know that she is Freza, but she started having blackouts, and then she started having some video footage, and now she fears that she could be Frieza, but she doesn't have no way to prove it. So Barry offers to take her to Star Labs to have her test it out, or I guess the Flash, because she only opens up about that with the Flash, not with Barry and Nora, since Nora kind of went off on her. But, however, so they do got a little bit of evidence where she starts showing a response to the testing materials that they were putting on her, and so, which leads into the last scene of the episode, was Speed Force Nora actually attacking Iris in order to use Barry's counter attack against her to then combine their powers to redirect it to kill Alexa. And when Speed Force Nora does this, she has yellow, red, and blue lightning, as opposed to just the one colored lightning that she is supposed to only have. So that's a little questionable there. But that's how the episode ends. The most shocking moment I will say for this is the fact that, again, I'm not shocked that Speed Force Nora ended up being evil, because I kind of figured that was going to be the case, because I just didn't trust her. The shocking thing for me was the fact that Frost offered herself up to the life sentence without parole, and I'm kind of surprised that was in part Caitlyn's idea. I mean, they definitely had this deep conversation, and then something that was said is what sparked Caitlyn to have an idea. And the next thing we know, we have Frost enacting this plan. So I'm kind of surprised at that, especially when Caitlyn has been spending the whole episode trying to get Frost out of a life sentence, So there's that. Moving on to top favorite moments of the episode, Frost's speech before she gives that life sentence offer was really great, really powerful. I'm glad that she got to say her piece about all of it. So that's something there. Another favorite, again, Caitlyn and Frost. Not only the dynamic between the two of them, but also the technical aspects that have to go into performing scenes like that with them is a reason why it's just one of my favorites to watch, just to see the duality between the two, and then to try to figure out how they did it as well. That's something with that. And then another favorite was Barry when he's dressed up as the Flash and he's talking with Alexa, and we actually get to figure out who this woman is, and then also see from Barry what he's picking up from her, and how we see he even more so that we want to help her, and we want to believe her. And then this is also the reason why we would also not want to believe Nora and her claims that Frieza would want to kill her, kind of a thing. So those are my three. The top peeved moment I had was the fact that pretty much this episode pretty much gives the impression that this is the last we'll see of Frost, which I'm even more confused because in the previous episode I thought with the way that they were trying to set up the connection between Frost and Chillblaine, and he's supposed to be the big villain in this season, or one of them, and so now I'm even more confused with him being locked up in the previous episode, and now with Frost being locked up too. I'm wondering, is this the last we're going to see? I'm kind of peeved by that because she is one of my favorite characters. So that's something there. Major tidbits I will say is that Chester and Camilla are absent in this episode. I'm very surprised that Chester was absent considering the growing dynamic between him and Frost. I thought if anything he would want to be a part of the support system for her trial. So that's the thing. But Camilla hasn't really been present since 703, I believe, since the quote unquote original season 6 finale, I believe, when she came back from the Mirrorverse. So was that the only last time, or did she appear sometime after that too? She definitely has been absent this season, so that's something. But moving on to random questions very quickly before we jump into 709. First question, do you think Frost being made as a separate entity from Caitlyn was kind of like her own death sentence, where that was their excuse to kind of get rid of the second character and to quote unquote kill her off in a way? Because also because the fact that they're in they're two separate entities we've had for most of season 7, what meant that it was double duty for Danielle to portray as an actor, as opposed to just having the switch in, switch out of Caitlyn and Killer Frost we've had for the previous few years. So I'm wondering if the moment they split them apart meant like kind of like, oh, you're only going to get both of them together briefly before you have to lose one of them. Because like if that was always going to be the plan, where like if that was always going to be the plan, then I think I would have rather had them split their time, because then that means we'd get more chances with them together instead of having to say goodbye to Frost forever. So I'm just wondering, what was like, was that always the end game, to split them apart so that Frost can actually go away? Was it they split them up and then to realize what the actual logical ramifications were because of that when it came to shooting it? Was it because of the pandemic? Like, what happened? I'm still kind of confused as to why you would set Frost away when she just was able to, because I was kind of curious, like, what she would do with her life now that she actually could live it, kind of a thing, and live it being separate from Caitlin, you know. And another question: will we see Caitlin visiting Frost, like we saw Barry visiting his father when he was in prison in season 1, or is that it for Frost? Which kind of, if that's the case, that kind of makes it a lot more sad, the final moments that her and Caitlin had in this episode together. So that's something with there. But moving on to 709. The reason why I did 8 and then 9 is because 709 actually takes place, like timeline-wise, it continues immediately where 708 left off. And that's with the opening scene being Barry and Iris confronting the Speed Force about killing Alexa, and then learning that when the Speed Force was reborn, it was Barry and Iris who were the causes behind the creation of the other 3 forces. And with that said, the 3 remaining forces of the Speed, Still, and Sage Force, they were the villains of this episode in some form or capacity. So with the storyline for this episode, picked up on 2 once again, the first one being stopping the forces, and then the second one being trying to reason with the forces. So with the first storyline, this is where we have Barry having the plan to go back in time to undo the creation of the 3 forces. And then with him, he has Cisco and Chester helping him out. And then he goes back to Starling City Beach 2000, in the year 2000, to get Timeless Wells to help them out, because they need to figure out at what point in time could they go back in time and not disrupt the timeline. And throughout this whole process, even though everybody's telling Barry that he can't undo the creation of the Speed Force, Barry goes through with it, but then at the very last minute backs out and allows for the forces to remain in existence. Meanwhile, in the second storyline of trying to reason with the forces, Iris recruits Allegra and Camilla to help her find Speed Force Nora, to try to reason with her to not kill the other forces. But in doing so, they end up tracking Psyche, the Sage Force, instead, and this is where Iris fails, to reason with him to kind of back down. Kind of similar with the first storyline, the team working on the time travel plan, they had a run-in with Dion, and they failed to reason with him. So it's after they're both failures in each part, and then both Barry and Iris came to realize that the other one was correct, and that they would also have to work together to try to pretty much be there for the forces and try to pretty much act like their parents, essentially, since they did create them. But the last scene of the episode showed Speed Force Nora finding Dion and calling herself a Reckoning, where she kind of does, it looks like she was doing the very fast hand, like the reverse flash kind of move. But then I don't know if it was the lighting or anything, but she did look like she had a bit of black in her hair, in her red hair. I don't know if it's meant to be more like she's taking a more darker look kind of a thing, or like something like snapped in her. Or maybe she was always like this and she was just putting up a front this whole time, but she's now has her eyes set on Dion. So there's that. Most shocking moment of the episode, let's move on to that, I would say, is the fact that Barry and Iris resurrected Alexa, aka Freza, aka the Strength Force, just by getting in close proximity to each other and to her, because they established in the episode that they each have a part of the 4 forces within them, because they did together, they did stem and create, like, you know what I mean. So there's that. Top favorite moments, I will say one of my favorites is Joe's talk with Barry. And then also you gotta get a little bit of callback to when Wally first came onto the show and how Joe had to readjust to having another child and trying to figure out how to bond and like build a connection, and then trying to, and the way how he kind of made it relevant to what was happening with Barry and the Forces and how he technically created them. So he technically is kind of their like power parent. So that was very interesting. And another favorite was the fact that we got to see Timeless Wells again, and it was just great to see him and having that dynamic. But also we got the confirmation in the episode where the three forces were actually created. I believe it was in 703. And we saw that moment where Wells at the control panel, he looks back behind them, and we never see who he looks behind. We assume it's Team Flash, but we know it's something else because otherwise they would have shown us Team Flash. This is the episode where we see that Wells was looking at the future Wells and Barry kind of stepping back in time. Because Timeless Wells says that, oh, I remember that moment. I remember seeing where this all began, kind of a thing. So I really like that we got to see exactly what he was seeing. I don't recall what I initially thought Wells was seeing in that moment when he did look back when it first happened in that scene. But I'm glad we finally got the answer there. Moving on to top peeved moment, I will say everyone's leaving. We do find, it's part of a tidbit, but I guess I'll say it now. One of the tidbits in this episode is the fact that Cisco and Camilla both made this decision to leave Central City. I mean, they made it separately, but it ended up being the same separate decision together. And they're probably going to go to San Francisco because Camilla's photos are being featured in a gallery there. So that ties into my peeve of how everyone seems to be leaving, and we'll talk about that later too. So that was just, it was kind of a bummer there because we just got Frost leaving in the previous episode, and now it looks like Camilla and Cisco are going to be leaving. It also looks like Wells is going to be leaving for a time period as well too, for who knows how long. So that's something there. Another peeve I had was the fact that they all believed that, or Barry believed that destroying the three forces wouldn't affect the timeline. I mean, that would only be true if the different forces weren't interacting with anybody else. Like if it was just Speed Force Nora, then I can see how they could say they can go back in time and change, and like, because like I keep thinking it's like they kept saying like, oh, Barry kept saying if we go back to that time and take away the particles of the forces before they go back and like to where they are now, and then it's like, but Dion did stuff with that power. Psyche did that stuff with the Sage Force, and then like Freysa did stuff with, or Alexa did stuff as Freysa. So it's like, even if you took away those powers, how are you then going to have them still do those same events without those powers? So it's not like when they were all like Nora, where she just stayed hidden during those 16, 17 days. Then like, okay, then you can play it off that like, okay, if we just take the Force, then it won't affect the timeline. But like Dion, Psyche, and Alexa still lived their lives. They were still using those powers. So it's like, it made no sense to me how they thought the plan that they did would have worked without affecting the timeline. They would have created another Flashpoint. I think they would have. And also that leads into the peeve of how Barry and Iris resurrected Alexa all because they touched her. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really wanted Alexa to be alive after like something would have happened. I would have thought it would have been something from their timeline their time traveling thing would have affected something that would have maybe prevented her from dying. Or maybe it was something different. Or I had hoped maybe if they had gotten Dion and Sage to come to the lab and together they helped boost the Strength Force, then like, okay. But it's just like, it's too much of like couple reliance. And I don't know if that's just, I really don't know. I'm just finding a lot of it's really connecting on to it, and I'm just like, really, like that's like too much. And then I don't even know if is it like that in the comics too? Like, I really don't know, but that was a personal peeve for me. I know a lot of people might like that part about the show, but I know for me it's getting to be a bit much. So we'll go from there. Let's move to random questions. First one. Why did the other forces merge with a human, yet Speed Force Nora did not? Like, why did the Sage Force go into Psyche? Why did the Still Force go into Dion? Why did the Strength Force go into Alexa? And yet the Speed Force didn't take on a human persona. It just decided to look human. Like, I don't get why. Which I guess is kind of a reason why I was suspicious of the Speed Force, because it wasn't acting like all the other ones. But I'm wondering why that's the case. Like, why did she choose that? And if that's the case, why did the others choose to connect themselves to a human host? Another question. Why are there constant reminders of the OG status of members in the Arrowverse lately? I mean, Camilla did that with Cisco, saying that she's an he's an OG member of the Flash team. And then in this week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow in 603, we got the same thing with Mick and Sarah being referenced to being the OG team members left. And I'm like, it's like, why are you mentioning this? But then also at the same time, it's like, you're kind of like gearing me up for the fact that one of those two are going to be leaving the show. Like, why? Don't, like, that's just, it's like, once I hear that, it's like, oh, wait a minute. You're leaving, aren't you? It's like, it's a kiss of death with that reminder. But yeah, I'm just wondering why. And I'm wondering if they made that consciously between the two shows to do that. Another random question is, why does the Speed Force want to kill the other forces? I mean, it looked like Psyche and Dion or Alexa didn't even know about the other ones. So I'm wondering, why does the Speed Force want to kill them? I think, like I started to believe before, I think she's the one that targeted them first. And maybe she's trying to collect all their power for herself. But I'm wondering why. Like, if she was just reborn, it's like, shouldn't she be like brand new instead of having like all this previous knowledge from like the previous Speed Force? Like, I don't know. Plus, also, does that mean the Still, Sage, and Strength Force were all like completely brand new, or were they also reborn as well too? Or did they have already like preconceived memories from beforehand? Like, I don't know. So that's a question there. Again, don't read the comics. I just have solely what is going off of the TV show. But let's move into predictions very quickly. Based off the promo for 7/10, it looks like Barry tries to train Alexa with the Strength Force, but it looks like she's not ready, and a bunch of people on Team Flash claim that she's not ready with Barry's tactics. But the synopsis reads, though, that Iris is pushed to the limit as she seeks to uncover the mysterious truth about Psyche. Meanwhile, Barry initiates a new training system that could potentially backfire with devastating consequences. Joe and Cisco make life-altering decisions. Well, we already know that Cisco's life-altering decision is to leave Central City, but what's Joe's decision? He better not be leaving either. Because and also 7/10 is part 1 of 2, so I will be doing a video with both 7/10 and 7/11 together, just because they're meant to be 2 parts of a storyline. So it's like, might as well just do 2 videos together, or 1 video with the 2 of them. But anyways, since Cisco's life-altering decision is to leave Central City, I'm hoping Joe's decision is not the same thing. I hope so. I hope not. Because that also ties into my news in the fact that Tom Cavanaugh, aka multiple Welleses, and Carlos Valdez, which is Cisco, they're both leaving the show after season 7. Which I'm kind of mad at, because like, I love Cisco and I love Wells, and then that also means their departure means I won't get the OG dynamic. I won't get the dynamic between Barry, Caitlin, Cisco. I won't get the dynamic between Barry, Cisco, and Wells. I won't get the dynamic between Caitlin, Wells, and Cisco, which is something I've been really missing for a while now. So the fact that they're actually leaving the show I'm sad about that. And also a part of me, and now that we got Frost technically leaving, which I'm hoping that doesn't mean that Danielle is leaving the show either. But I think with this news about Tom and Carlos, I think I'm gonna make the decision to not do Flash recap videos after season 7. I don't know. It's just lately with this season. I don't know if it's because of the implications of COVID and how they had to shift a few things they had to make do, which I know they had no choice in doing, but it's definitely changed the show for me, and I'm not as excited as I used to be to watch it. I mean, it took me like usually I'd want to get on the episodes the night of, but like again, these were from last week and 2 weeks before that. It's like really the only push I had to watch these 2 episodes was because I wanted to do it before 7-11 popped up. Otherwise, I'd have to wait until 7-10 popped up. Otherwise, I have to wait until 7-11 and do a 4-episode video instead. So it's just, I think it rightfully would be for me to just step away from Flash recaps after this season. We'll have to see about Legends, how that sits with. It just, I don't know. I don't know if, yeah. That's my news. So season 7 of The Flash will be the last of the recaps I do. Not counting any crossover stuff they might do in the future. I might cover that. Who knows? But that is it for this video, guys. What did you guys think of the 2 episodes? What did you guys like about it? What did you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about 708 and 709. Love to hear all your thoughts and theories about that in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. I read blog, promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all the good stuff, all found in one place. Go check that out. A little more organized, a little more detail, but still work in progress as well. Sorry, guys, if my mind seems a little bit all over the place. I just finished watching the 2 episodes tonight, and I'm still kind of shocked and a little stunned by my own feelings for these 2 episodes. So, yeah. I don't know. Guys, in the comments down below, let me know your thoughts about it. Like, how did you walk away from the episode? Like, is it just me because I didn't read the comics, so I don't know where these storylines could go? Or is it really just that time for me that, like, it's time to step away and this nostalgia of it has kind of gone for me? I don't know. I'm kind of bummed out now that I think about it. But yeah, you know me. I never like hearing news about cast members leaving before their actual departure date, because then it's just kind of like, oh, how are they going to do it? I'd rather be surprised and then be bummed out about it afterwards instead of being like beforehand, you know? Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it there, guys. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. And I hope you come back to see what I have to say about 7, 10, and 11, which is the 2-parter episode for The Flash. Otherwise, I hope you check out my other videos that are on the channel as well. And yeah, hope to see you next time. Also, just a huge reminder that Superman and Lois returns starting May 18th, which is actually technically today for me since it's after midnight. But I'm very excited to see that one returning. That is one show that I've been missing for the last, what has been, 8 weeks. So yeah, check that out as well, even though I don't do videos about it. But check out that show. But again, hope to see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.